You're watching America Trends. I am Mary Burt-Godwin, and I cannot wait to meet this next guest. You may have seen him on National Geographic's The Wildlife of Dr. Oli. He is the most interesting vet in the world. I don't know how, I cannot wait to find out how he got this title. There he is, Dr. Oli. Welcome to America Trends.
Thank you, Mary. It's completely wonderful honor to be on your show. I really like it. It's been great watching you, and it's a real treat to be here.
Yes, well, I have, I actually did not plan on this sweater, but then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm wearing an animal print sweater just in time to meet Dr. Oli. So I want to hear all about you and your journey of how you became to be the greatest, most interesting vet in the world, I should say. But tell me how you started. Did you have pets when you were growing up and you just fell in love with them and that started your journey?
Well, first of all, I did notice your sweater that you're wearing first thing, so thank you for that. My story was I'm a native Arizonan, which is a very unusual thing. I grew up in the desert, and
you're what's called a zoni here,
animals.
Dr. Oli. We call you zonies here in San Diego.
I promise you, I don't visit your beach and make it uncomfortable very often. However, yes, no, I know what a zoni is. But anyway, I grew up, surrounded by wild animals and obviously domestic animals, and it was just a natural path journey to become what I've become. I was a normal kid growing up, as most children are. I think I played sports and tried to go to school. But to me, one of the most exciting things I could ever do was be dropped off at the Phoenix Public Library. And I would just go to the science section and just start reading all things animal. It was any animal I was interested in. Most of the time I was pulled towards wild animals. And so I ended up going to college as a wildlife biology major, and ended up switching my major because everyone always said I was going to be a veterinarian, and wham, here I am, and became a veterinarian. And it was kind of odd because when I got to vet school, I looked around and I thought, what am I doing here? Is there a reason why I chose this profession? Because obviously I didn't really expect to be spaying dogs or vaccinating cats. And although I find all that very, very exciting to this day, I knew that my path was going a different direction in this profession one way or another.
So you not only treat domestic animals, now you also treat wild animals as well. So is that, I was reading about White Mountain Animal Hospital that you started, correct?
Right. I actually started 3 different domestic animal practices in my career, and White Mountain Animal Hospital was the mothership. But I also have just a really super unique practice in that I've got very much involved in zoo and wildlife medicine, conservation medicine, particularly where we are. As a veterinarian, I'm a cog in the wheel of the great big pyramid of wildlife management in general. But because I tended down this pigeonhole, which I love so much, and I'm very, very passionate about it, I've had the unique opportunity to work literally around the world with wild species, with people interested in wildlife in general, and again, working with wildlife professionals to make them become even better at their jobs in terms of wildlife capture, wildlife disease studies, wildlife sampling, all these things. There was no name for it when I started it. It just became what it is organically. And to this day, it just stirs this passion in me to be able to go out there and be able to help these animals that would otherwise not have a veterinarian available to help them.
So tell me, you mentioned conservation medicine in there. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? That piqued my interest. Because there are a lot of animals out there that are going to be extinct, and there's conservation of these animal species. So is that something that you focus on?
Absolutely. I look at conservation medicine as a way for my grandkids to be able to enjoy the great natural resources that has really influenced my life in terms of, being able to work in so many different ecosystems, working with so many different species, both game and non-game, and being part of a lot of endangered species recovery programs. I'm the program veterinarian for the Mexican Wolf Project, which is a recovery effort currently going on in Arizona and New Mexico. The Sonoran Pronghorn Recovery Project, which is just an excellent success story. And I've worked with black-footed ferrets, California condors, other species of endangered animals, and knowing that I'm bringing back them at my level from the brink gives me great pride and swells my heart.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, amazing work. And, we were just showing some clips there, it looked like, of your show, Wildlife. I wanted to talk to you about that. How did the show come to be? Was this your idea that you took to National Geographic, or did they come and approach you?
Well, Mary, that's a good question. I actually, the day I graduated from vet school, if anyone would have ever told me that I am going to be on television someday on a routine basis, I would have laughed their ear off.
That wasn't a goal of yours?
Yeah, I actually started my television, outside of when I was a kid, I think I was on a local variety show. But in the terms of this context, I just had some producers approach me 20 years ago and say, you've got the coolest job and one of the greatest practices I've ever witnessed and been around. Is it okay if we film you? And so they did. And they spent about a year following me around. And we ended up creating a sizzle reel called, they wanted to call it Wildlife Vets. And I didn't think it was sexy enough. So I said, let's call it Vets Gone Wild. And they said, well, what's that going to be? I go, well, I'm going to lift up my shirt. You can blur out my chest. I don't know. We'll make this work. But let's make this work so people are interested in it. And my goal has always been to not only show the fine work that's being done out there, but also to be an educator. I come from 4 generations of educators, but I'm also a storyteller, and I love telling the story behind it. So we've really had a good run, and so That's Gone Wild went to a certain direction, and then we did we actually produced a short film called The Jaguar Story, where we were contacted by colleagues in Mexico and also the Mexican government, and there was a couple of jaguars that were illegally captured, and they had broken off all their teeth in their mouth.
Wow.
And they wanted to let them go. They wanted to liberate. Yeah, they were caught in the trap, and they're trying to get out, so they break these giant canines off. And jaguars are the biggest large cat in the Americas, and they actually subdue their prey and actually kill their prey by crushing their skull with these great big canines. But without canines, they couldn't go make a living in the wild. So I ended up getting a group of biologists and dentists and myself as the anesthetist, and we all collaborated on this idea. Let's put their teeth back in their mouth. So we actually put teeth in the jaguar's mouth and released them back in the wild and liberated them from a miserable life in captivity. And we filmed it, and actually I won an Emmy for that. So I don't know if that's what actually started the career, but shortly thereafter I was contacted by another production company, and we created another television program that aired on the Outdoor Channel called Wild Ops. And it really was about the wildlife management efforts behind species. So people, I wanted to bring out the passion of wildlife in that program, because under the North American model of wildlife management, it says that we own the wildlife, whereas the European model of wildlife management says the king owns the wildlife. So everybody in these great United States has a seat at the table And a part to play in wildlife management, whether that animal happens to be in Virginia or Arizona, we all have ownership. And so we highlighted in that program, that series of called Wild Ops, we highlighted the management efforts behind a number of different wild species. And so it was voted fan favorite. It was very popular, but never went to a second season. So I thought that was my 15 minutes that I get in my life.
Okay, well, you've got a couple more minutes. We got to take a quick break, Dr. Ole, and we're going to come back because I've got more questions for you. And I absolutely love everything that you do. So stick around and we'll be right back with more Dr. Ole right after this.
Ain't no lot to see. All those plans I made for myself, I got nobody else to lean on.
Welcome to everyone joining us to experience stories of resilience, hope, perseverance, and joy.
Move over to a sport chair, basketball wheelchair.
Category of Best Video are...
We love you guys.
You are watching America Trends, and I am chatting it up with Dr. Ole, the most interesting vet in the whole wide world. Dr. Ole, zooming in here from Arizona. He's not a zony, he says. I don't think anyone else outside of San Diego knows what that means besides, you know, zonies and San Diegans. But so I love all of these things that you're involved with. It's just amazing work that you're doing. And I'm wondering how, you know, how it is now. You're not just the most interesting vet, you're also a reality star that probably, do you get recognized when you go out places?
Yeah, a few people have said there he is, and I'm always been a very approachable person, so I'll talk to folks. I've had people stop by my office. I had one young fan that spent their summer traveling across the U.S. and came by the office at, in Pine Top, Arizona, which isn't a very big town. And, I gave her an autograph in the form of a gate pass to one of the zoos that I worked in. And so she went to the zoo. And anyway, so yes, I wouldn't say that I have to walk through major airports with sunglasses and bodyguards.
Not yet.
A few people have seen me and recognize me, but, which is nice. I'm always, like I said, very approachable. I'll talk to anybody. I've never been afraid to speak, and I've never met a stranger in my life. So I think that works to my advantage when I get to meet people that I actually watch the show, see the show, and want to see the guy behind the scenes.
Right.
I still I have had plenty of people that come to me with their pets that have met me through the television show, and I still work and still see people. So it's been really a wonderful experience.
I love that. And I really feel like there's this bond that happens between people about animals, and that you can just create this bond from that love that you have for animals, and it transcends everything, and you kind of already have this connection to people. So people see how you are with animals, and then they know you're obviously a great human, so they want to be your friend. Now, I want to know can you tell me about maybe the wildest encounter you've had with an animal, or the craziest thing that's ever happened to you?
There's been plenty of those.
I bet. Okay, we'll just pick one.
Well, just going back, working with wild animals, that they are not there to be your friend, and they aren't going to accept your treatment or your idea of helping them willingly. So oftentimes we're going to be using some kind of restraint, whether it be chemical or physical restraint. But to tell you about injuries that I've received, I have had the air knocked out of me by bighorn sheep, butting me in the chest.
Wow.
I've had very close encounters with jaguars and mountain lions that we were researching with. Never got me, but got very close. I took a pronghorn hit to my lip here one time. The horn, we were restraining a pronghorn for a procedure, and it literally went right through my lip into my maxillary bone.
Wow.
I ended up at the emergency room, had an arterial bleeder. My flight suit was covered in blood. And I'll tell you, the easiest way to get into an emergency room is to walk in and covered in blood and say, I've got an arterial bleeder in my face right now, and I got immediate treatment. But I will tell you, Mary, hands down, people ask me what the most dangerous animal I've ever worked on is, and to this day I will repeat, a 10-pound house cat, because you never know what's going to happen with those guys.
A 10-pound cat?
They're either 10-pound house cat has got to be one of the most unpredictable animals I've ever worked with. I mean, they can look like they love you, and the next minute your hand is hamburgers. So,
Oh my gosh!
It's always a challenge. But I've raised a lot of veterinarians in my career, and I always tell them, to be a good veterinarian, you got to be able to look into the brain of that species, of that animal, and not only that species, but that individual within that species, and know what they're thinking. And if you know how they think, then you can interact with them in a much more mutually beneficial way, where there's less stress on the animal and there's less stress on the people around us working on that animal. So working on a white-tailed deer, for instance, is, you got to know how a white-tailed deer thinks versus, working on a California condor or, a Mexican gray wolf is not a dog, it's a wolf. And how they think and react is going to determine how you proceed and how you maneuver yourself around your patients. But it's been a wild ride, and I have not ever found a need to even utter the word retirement at this point, because I so much love this job that they're going to have to fire me. Otherwise, I will be in a wheelchair and a drool cup doing my job till the day I can't do it anymore. They kick me out.
Well, I love that. We always have people on the show that successful business people that have found their passion, and you truly have. I have a couple questions I want to ask you. One is very specific to where I live, but I think people around the country can probably deal with this or have the same question. We have some wildlife in our area, and occasionally I see mountain lions, coyotes, a lot of coyotes, but I saw a mountain lion on the trail near my house recently, and I was petrified and terrified. And so what is something that a normal Joe Schmo like me can be doing if I'm cruising along on the path and I see a mountain lion? I mean, I just kind of backed up and went the other way. It was pretty far away, but are there tips for things to do to handle that?
Well, yes, there are. And each species is very much different, but, especially over in California with the urban sprawl, and now we're living in the mountain lion's house rather than the mountain lion living in our house. They become habituated, and they see people every day, and mountain lions have been documented as being quite dangerous sometimes in these urban environments. So
should I blow a whistle or something?
You don't want to act like a prey animal. You don't want to run away from it. So you want to make yourself look as big as possible.
Okay.
Yell, scream.
That's what I've heard. I wanted to ask you and make sure that was true. Act really big. Should I? Well, Dr. Oli, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope that you'll come back because I love everything that you're doing for the animals of the world. And everyone at home, stick around. We've got more America Trends with Lynn Lee and Laura Kofoid of Lottie Vidney right after this.